The FujiCast is an independent loading zone production.
30,000 subscribers.
Woo-hoo.
Yeah, to your YouTube. You are now are you officially? Does that make you a YouTuber? Were you a YouTuber before?
It officially makes me happy, and it happened literally as I walked into your studio this morning.
Amazing.
It was on 29999.
Ding. People like Casey Neistat used to make videos of him looking at a screen where the numbers used to come around.
Well, that was the Social Blade stuff, but because YouTube changed all their API, the Social Blade stuff is irrelevant now because they only show in 100 blocks. It doesn't do it individually.
You can't use it now for that video.
Nope. Well,
So
you can if you've got millions of subscribers because your 100 blocks will be going up every second.
Yeah.
But when your 100 blocks go up every 3 days, it doesn't really make the same.
That's
It doesn't have the
amazing,
same impact. Yeah, I'm really happy with that. 30,000 subscribers.
So that's I go locally sometimes to watch Reading FC play. That's the whole stadium. That's Reading's whole stadium, I think.
Yeah.
Roughly.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Reading
with you in the middle of the pitch, everybody looking at you.
Like Cardiff Football Club, because they've played 3 times against each other in the last 10 days, I think.
Yeah, something like that, yeah. It's like a home fixture now.
The FujiCast.
Right, hello, welcome along to the FujiCast. We're back in the studio. Although, actually, funnily enough, in a couple of weeks, we have a particularly special episode that will not be in the studio, which we can't talk about. Because what's the first rule about things you can't talk about?
What are you on about?
Well, when that episode we're doing... You know.
Yes. Yes. Oh, yeah, we can't talk about that.
That one.
It's way too early.
Right, today you and your questions mailbag is electronically brimming, so thank you for your questions that you've sent to click@fujicast.co.uk. There's never enough, so send more in. If you've emailed before, by the way, fantastic. You are officially what we know as a friend of the show. If you haven't emailed before, get on the keyboard and know yourself as a first-time writer because we love to hear from you too. For those who have Fujifilm cameras, then this show, of course, will have lots of techo answers to some of your questions. But there's just as many things that don't have anything to do with Fujifilm as well, such as your stories, your thoughts, the things that happen to you as you go through your photographic career in whatever genre. At the end of the show, we'll have another one of your photo disasters. If you've left a review in Apple Podcasts, we may well be reading your one out today. And from Kev's bookshelf, we have a recommended book. Which one are we doing today?
We're doing Exposures by Jane Bown.
Oh, I love Jane Bown's work. I like her story. Her story is amazing, isn't it? So, questions. There's lots and lots of questions today. Do you?
Yeah.
I've put them in front of you.
Yeah.
You got a book on top.
Well,
of them.
firstly, I think we should say thank you very much to everybody who came along.
Oh God, yes. Oh, that's what I meant to do right at the start.
Yeah, don't worry, I'll do it.
Not
Don't
your
worry,
30,000. No, your 30,000 subscriber thing.
Too late.
Oh God.
Too late.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
We've just lost. I might have 30,000 YouTube subscribers. We now have 2 podcast subscribers.
Oh God, yeah. Thank you to everybody that came along. It was such a great evening. I really enjoyed meeting.
It was a good night.
I didn't feel that we met everybody.
No, well, we couldn't because there was 1,500 people there.
No, 2,000.
No. In fairness, it was great. Thanks to everybody that kind of helped us, Sam and Steve and Gemma and especially Andreas at Fujifilm and the House of Photography for housing us.
Oh yes,
and everybody else, probably anybody and everybody that was there. It was good fun.
JP came along.
JP,
as well.
of course,
all
and
the way from America.
He is the coolest man I've ever met.
He is, isn't he?
Yeah.
He's the same age as me, and yet he looks 15, 20 years younger than me.
I'd say a bit more than that. But yeah, thanks to everybody who came along. It was a blast, and that was. And I think we should say. Congratulations to us for doing 52 in 1 year. It's pretty epic.
Yeah.
Not many podcasts do that.
No.
And to think all we have to do is turn up and talk into these furry things and everything else just happens.
Yeah, it's not quite as magical as that. There are a few other things that happen. There we go.
All right, so
questions. You lead.
This is it's quite a long one from Robert Pope in
Settle in.
He signs. I haven't read the question yet, but he signs off worried from Tunbridge Wells.
Oh no.
Okay, so looking at the recent sales photos of the new X100V, although it has a number of improved features, I see that it no longer has the D-pad. Right, now I see where this is going. This concerns me because it probably means that there are fewer programmable functions. Kevin has taught me to use back button focusing method, which, now that I understand the advantages of quickly refining exposure, I find very useful. I have the X100F and I use the D-pad for back button focusing. I find this much more comfortable as therefore quicker than using the AFL button. I was wondering if the joystick is now programmable and whether you have had a chance to do this. I also have an XT3 and use D-pad on this too for back button focusing. I worry that all Fuji camera updates will now dispense with a D-pad. Well, okay, so...
D-pad gate.
D-pad gate. Well, the fact is I haven't touched an X100V, so obviously I know it. I've seen the pictures also, so I know it doesn't have a D-pad.
I don't think anybody believed you, did they? Said, "Oh, go on,
Kev." I know. Do you know I had
Yeah.
I had well in excess of 40 messages on X100V launch day saying, "When did you review it? When did you review it?" And I was like, "Well, not yet. I'm gonna have to buy it," which is fine. You know, it's actually
like everybody else who, by the way, did review it. Nick Turpin said he wasn't looking forward to sending his back.
Nick's little video was ace. Actually, I really liked that. He did a really good job of showcasing the camera, so that's good for him and good for Fujifilm. I think the X100V is flying off the shelves on pre-orders, as it always was going to. But back to the D-pad question. Now, the X Pro 3 lost its D-pad over the previous cameras, but it actually increased the amount of function buttons because of the touchscreen and the swipes and various other bits and pieces. So I don't know for sure whether the X100V has technically more function buttons or programmable buttons over the X100F. I suspect it probably does. The D-pad is a very subjective thing. I always disable my D-pad. Always disable it because I'm forever pressing it and touching it and, you know, all that stuff.
So much.
I never use it ever. I really pare down my camera I use the top function button for exposure, for telemetry. I use the front, one of the other function buttons for changing the shutter type from electronic to mechanical and back again. Yep. That's it.
What about
everything else is switched off?
So changing, I think I've got drive selected on the D-pad.
No, drive's a physical button.
Is it?
Yeah.
What have I got?
Oh, actually, no, drive isn't a physical. Drive.
It is on the D-pad.
Drive is on the D-pad, but I guess on the X100V that would be one of the buttons at the top, just like the X Pro.
For me, it's white balance, it's drive, it's.
You change white balance?
Sometimes.
See, I never change white balance. Then I have boost because the XT3. Performance boost on the bottom of the D-pad. Oh, just leave that on all the time. Why would you turn that off?
Maybe I'm making life more complicated for myself.
Well, anyway, the fact is, it is a very divisive decision.
Actually, if I think about it, those things that I do have selected are not things I regularly tamper with.
Yeah, and I guess my understanding, and I might be wrong about this, my understanding is in order for them to weather seal it properly, and I know it's not properly weather sealed because you need to have the adapter ring on the front, but in order for them to weather seal the body, they have to have less, or they needed to have less opportunity for moisture, etc., to get in. So presumably it's something to do with that. My thought on it is that probably as we go through time, there will be less and less D-pads on Fujifilm cameras because they are, they're getting more and more uncumbered by buttons and bits and pieces like that.
Uncumbered?
Is
that a new word?
Isn't that a real word? Uncumbered. I use that all the time.
Right.
Uncumbered. What would you say?
I mean, I'm uncumbered to meet you.
No, uncumbered. Like
uncluttered? Clutter-free? And they're trying to declutter?
Uncumbered. No, type it into the computer. Uncumbered.
Uncumbered. You carry on while I type in this.
There we go. Uncumbered. When you're uncumbered, you feel free of baggage.
Unencumbered. No, it's unencumbered.
That's what I said, uncumbered.
not that actually if you'd said unencumbered. No, you're free of baggage. Either literally you don't have a lot of stuff to carry, or you're emotionally carefree.
And underneath, look, uncumbered.
Uncumbered.
Yes.
No, unencumbered.
No, dictionary.com underneath says uncumbered. Yeah.
Hamper, to overload, to burden, to inconvenience, to trouble.
That's cumber. Yes.
Yeah.
So I believe the buttons.
So you're right. Yeah. There we go.
Ding, ding.
I apologise.
Anyway, look, the fact is, some people are going to like it without a D-pad, and some people aren't. Me, personally, I never really use D-pad. I actually disable the joystick as well, because I use central focus points and turn that off.
Don't take the joystick away.
No, they won't take the joystick away, but I don't use that. I put it in P mode, and I just... I just use the AFL button on the back. However, you're right about it being difficult on the X100 range to reach the AFL button, especially got little hobbit fingers like me. So I have my AFL allocated to the rear command dial on the X100F. I've yet to see the X100V. I will, I'm sure, be buying one.
Will you be buying one?
Yeah, probably.
Mafti Sajaris, hi from usually sunny Crete. Oh, what's going on in Crete at the moment? You guys should definitely think about coming over here for your next meetup.
That's right. I went there on my first honeymoon.
Did you?
Heraklion.
Heraklion Airport.
Yeah.
Were you staying at the airport? Were you? Maybe that's why you split.
I wish we had. That was nice. I love Crete.
Crete is the first. I went there. Maybe when I was about 2021, and it was the first place I sampled red wine. I'd never had red wine until I went to Crete. And they say the first time you have red wine, it's never as good ever again, is it?
I don't know. Yeah, that's what UB40 said, wasn't it? They said that too.
Did they?
Red wine.
We may not have a house.
We're doing this way too early.
We may not. Yes, this is practically, by the way, a breakfast show this morning. We may not have a house of photography, but we have plenty of tavernas. Oh look, and super wines. There we go. You're right about that. It was a windmill. It was a little restaurant. It was made out of a windmill. Oh, beautiful place. Question about filters. I heard a YouTuber just the other day say that filters are a waste of time and that photographers tend to use them only for protecting their lens. I've always thought that the minimum you should have is a UV filter, but he was suggesting they add a layer of glass that can spoil your pictures with unwanted artifacts and that any effects you need to add or remove can be done in Lightroom or Photoshop. Your thoughts? What a load of nonsense.
Yeah, pretty much.
It depends what filters you use.
Yeah, I mean, if you're using NDs or grads, then they're there for a very definite reason.
Absolutely. Or polarizer.
Bring the exposures down.
A variable ND, which I use a lot when filming.
Yeah, all of that. I mean, I presume he's just on about UV filters as in lens protecting filters.
Now, I know you don't, do you? You don't use them, but I do, because in the very early days, I dropped a couple of lenses and smashed the filter and thought, well, there we go. That was a lot cheaper than having to buy a new lens.
I like to have my lenses uncumbered.
No, unencumbered. So I don't know. Do they add a lot? I mean, if your pixel peeping and going right in, and
I think the good ones. I think the good UV filters
get what you pay for.
Will do what they're meant to do without any artifacts. I'm fairly sure of that. However, as somebody who doesn't use them, I can't prove that, but I'm fairly sure that the decent quality ones, the ones you're going to buy for £4 off eBay, probably are not going to be great.
Whoever it was that said any effects you need to add or remove can be done in Lightroom or Photoshop, then obviously they were talking about ND filters and stuff like that, which are absolutely essential for some parts of photography. I mean, I even used for a film recently I made about I need to do the follow-up for a camera. I used a tobacco filter because I know it's quite old-fashioned, the graduated tobacco filter, but I wanted that sort of Top Gear look for a car that I was filming.
And you used a filter for that, right?
I used a filter holder. It was a leaf filter holder. Put one of those great big square filters in, slid it down, perfect. Did the job that I wanted it to do.
Yeah.
And helped me with a bit of exposure problems with the early morning sun as well.
Yeah, exactly. And you can't be photographing a sunset or a sunrise and without using a filter to bring your exposures down. You can't. You just can't. You can't do that in post-production, regardless of your camera's dynamic range and all that stuff. So,
why don't you use the unencumbered thing? I know, but is
uncumbered.
That uncumbered? Is that cucumbered? Is that the reason you don't want to use? You don't want anything in front of your lens?
No, it's not.
Have you just been too tight to buy them?
I've just never bought them. I've just never gone down that route, and I've never touched wood. I've never broke a lens or smashed a lens or anything. I'm sure it will happen. I don't even use lens caps. I'm actually.
Your bag is devoid of the niceties like lens caps and dividers.
Yeah, I'm using that divider you left on my chair. I'm using it as my coffee coaster.
It's very funny, actually. Yeah, look, I'm going to take a photograph of that and I'm going to put that in the Facebook group because he this morning. I don't know how. Honestly, I didn't put it there on purpose. When Kev went to sit down in the studio chair, velcroed to it was a divider. And he said, "Are you taking a?" It's now a perfect coaster for a coffee cup. Right, your question.
Okay, Dominique Martel goes on to say, congratulations on the podcast. You're really interesting.
Who?
Not you, and not you.
You, obviously.
Regarding Don McCaskill's letter he sent saying that Flickr is still losing money, I'd like to know your thoughts. Take KO talked about it during a recent podcast, and he said Flickr might have an identity problem. We were thinking if they have a real differentiating factor compared to Instagram or other photography platforms. I'd like to know your thoughts on that. I love Flickr and I hope it doesn't disappear, but do you think it needs to be updated or they need to update their business model? Should they make significant changes to attract more users? What do you think?
We have a Flickr group, don't we? But and I went all gung-ho and went into it, put a load of pictures in there and haven't been in there since. It's just not a platform I use.
You know what? Yes, same for me. I don't use Flickr. No, I would love to see Flickr, reignite and be successful again. SmugMug, which is a British company, Scottish company, have bought it and have invested heavily in it. What I'm hearing recently is that they've had to increase their fees to help them kind of troll some of that back. My perception of Flickr, being from somebody who doesn't really use it, is still it's somewhere to just put your pictures. Now, and chat forums and stuff. Now, I have my website for that. Anything I want to show to my clients, it goes onto my website. So to me, it seems like it's still targeting the hobbyist kind of marketplace, people who perhaps won't have their own website and all that kind of stuff. Are those people going to be paying for it? Now, Flickr traditionally was free, you see. So are those people going to be paying for it or paying enough for it? I think that's probably the conundrum they have now. Now, I would love to see it succeed. And yeah, I guess they have to offer something different. But what? That's the $64 million question, isn't it? I really would love to see them do well.
It must be very difficult to get up in the morning thinking I'm battling Instagram, Facebook.
X and
it feels like one platform too far, many.
500px was one that I was quite interested in originally.
Me too. Yeah,
that looked beautiful. Yeah. It really looked beautiful. And then they allowed people to sell their images direct via stock sales. However, they got really greedy, and then eventually they were taking, I don't know what the figures were, but 80% or whatever. And maybe that's something for Flickr to look into. Maybe they can offer a way for people to, maybe they already do, don't know. Maybe they can offer a way for people to monetize their website. I'm sure it connects to the SmugMug enterprise and the labs and all that. Right. So, all I would say is good luck to Flickr. I really hope it succeeds. But yeah, identity crisis probably is the right word.
Right, Apple reviews. Thank you very much for your Apple reviews. We're going to split them into smaller bits than we have been doing, and then we can badger on with the questions, unencumbered even.
Unencumbered.
Go on then, have you got one?
I have, this is from Dr. L.
Dr. L.
Via Apple Podcasts.
Dr. Evil.
He says, new friends, love listening to this podcast. The banter is so entertaining they don't even need sound effects. Controversial.
He does not say that.
He does say that.
He does not say that. He gets one of these.
Warning.
He then goes on to say, yet the sound effects are there and they have their own charm.
Oh, they do.
Neil and Kev feel like new friends, and I look forward to hanging with them each week. Thanks for the great job.
Oh, there we are. And we'll say to you,
you're our favourite listener, and we mean it.
See, if we didn't have jingles, you wouldn't have got one. Questions. Marku Honkala. Oh, that's a fantastic name. I wonder if one or both of you are in the process of publishing a photo book of your work. Thinking process or actually working towards it. Your thoughts on arranging, publishing or self-publishing of your own work would be greatly appreciated. Cheers from a Finnish fan in Brussels, Marku. Thank you very much. What would your book be on if you... you have had a book out, I know, but that was a...
That was a technical book.
That was a technical book. If you could... I'm sure if there was a dream book, it wouldn't be a technical one, would it?
No. I've actually had a couple of conversations with publishers about this kind of stuff. And it's something that's potentially... down the line, I don't know. My personal pictures, kind of street photography and everything, I don't think is of the caliber for printing. Weddings, perhaps there's an interesting angle.
You do yourself a great disservice there.
I think there's an interesting angle with the wedding stuff, but the problem with the wedding stuff is permissions.
Yes.
And a lot of the pictures that I would like to do are from clients that are many, many years ago. Some of which, may answer their emails, some of which will just say no, some of which may sadly no longer be together. All kinds of things. Interestingly, I had an email recently from a bride saying, you shot our wedding in 2013, I think. And unfortunately, we're no longer together. And my house was recently burgled, and they stole the wedding ring and engagement ring. I just wondered if you had a photo. And I said,
of the ring?
Yeah.
Of the insurance?
Yeah, for the insurance.
Okay.
So I said to her, well, actually, your wedding photos are still online. I've not taken them down. So you can have a look through. She basically, they separated very shortly after the wedding, so she didn't look at the wedding pictures then.
So this is the first time she'd seen her album?
Pretty much.
Her collection?
I'm guessing so, yeah. Anyway, so, yeah, books. Yeah, you need to look beyond Neil and I think, for the books just yet. People like Sean Tucker, and he's on collection 3 now. His books are great. If you're looking for more independent style books, I'm talking people like Sean Tucker.
So let's change it there a little. Let me change the question a little bit for Marco. If you could perhaps have an exhibition of something that was very different, what would you? No, you have had exhibitions.
I have had exhibitions,
So your street stuff's been up in Japan.
It has.
You're big in Japan, as Alphaville once said.
And a lot of my family pictures are still up in the House of Photography.
Yes,
So,
they were behind the cash till, weren't they?
Grinning at us, behind the cash till. My family stuff and my own personal family stuff is interesting, I think, rather than necessarily other people's family stuff, just purely because it's their very personal property. So who knows? I don't know. Right now I have a to-do list as long as a very long person, and getting a book out is not on the priority list. It's on the list, but it's not high up in it. What about you? You always come up with that
so many ideas, but it's the same as you. I mean, this is a question in itself. How long should you spend on your business, working in your business? How much time should you spend on personal projects? Are they your saviour? All of the above. There's one I've been sort of tampering and tinkering with for ages, which is Face for Radio, which is my idea of it's just a nice portrait of nothing particularly I suppose creative about it, but a good strong black and white portrait of radio presenters, and underneath each of the frames would hang a set of headphones where you could listen to the person telling the story of their life.
Right, okay.
That was my idea.
Yes, sorry, I thought you meant... No, that's a great idea. And that actually...
Face for radio. That's what they used to say about people in radio.
Yes.
You got a face for radio.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Thank you.
But that's similar to the Nan Goldin thing, isn't it? The art of sexual dependency, which was designed to be...
There's nothing sexual about my one.
It was designed to be like a photo film, effectively. It was designed to be listened to
was that,
as well as viewed.
Yeah, of course. Yes. We talked about that.
We did.
Yeah.
We did. Yeah, that's a really good idea, I think. Just got to do it then.
About 10 years I've been doing this one.
You need a tattoo like me. It says on my arm, stuff that works.
Or your mother.
As my mother thought
that it was stuff that...
The O was an A. She thought the O was an A. Yes. Quite.
Yeah.
Well done, Mum.
Right.
Bless her.
Okay. Shall we have one more question, then go into this week's interview?
Okay. Right, yes. Well, then I will come back to George Fakinos's email later, because that's a big one.
Actually, that's a major talking point.
Are
we doing that today? George Fakinos's one?
Yeah, let's do it today.
Oh.
It's a good one.
Yeah. Okay, you could be opening a can of worms with that one, but it's a good eat, so don't go anywhere. So let's do one more question, and then this week we're going to be listening to, funnily enough, one of the reasons I mentioned YouTube right at the start was that I wanted to mention that today we are going to talk to Thomas Heaton, the landscape YouTuber. I absolutely love Thomas's work, and I really followed his journey that he took to the Himalayas. I don't know if you saw that. Yeah. Real struggle, and you think of Tom as a really fit chap because of all that fell walking and everything he does for his landscape work, but he struggled with the altitude, as a lot of people do.
Yeah, well, I don't think altitude is... I mean, you need good lung capacity and everything, but perfectly healthy people can struggle at altitude.
Yeah. So one more question, then we'll come to this week's interview.
So this is from Rich. Yes. He says, "Hi chaps, great show, yada 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 yada. Recently seen an article on Petapixel about how back button focusing could be seen as outdated due to the ability of modern cameras. Personally, I do use it with my X100F and can also see how things could be different if I had one of the newer cameras. Just wonder what your thoughts are on this subject, being that your guys do use the latest gear. Keep smiling, Kev." All the best, Rich. Yeah. Well, I am smiling, mostly because my tummy's rumbling.
Was that me, or was that you? Do you want some toast?
Well, I think that's... I don't know. I didn't see that article on Petapixel. Back button focusing could be seen as outdated due to the ability of modern cameras. Well, I mean, on the modern Fujifilm cameras, you now have the AF on functionality, which technically allows you to back button focus. But it's still the same principle. I mean, ultimately, back button focusing is just divorcing the shutter button from the autofocus. Right. So you focus once, effectively, and then you fire many times, which is much, much quicker. I can't see any technological advancement that kind of stops that from happening now.
Right.
Yes, the button configuration might be different, and as far as I'm aware, there's no way that you can alter it. I mean, it doesn't, in my mind anyway, which in fairness, my brain is very small and even smaller this time of the day. But yeah, I mean, it's not something I would think about.
Back button focus is the lifeblood of your camera use, though, isn't it?
Absolutely. That's
not having that.
That's the button with all of the grime and the letters rubbed off and all of that stuff.
It's a well-loved button.
It's a well-loved button.
Right, let's come to this week's interview. We were just talking a second ago about Thomas Heaton, the landscape photographer and YouTuber. Had an opportunity recently to, and in fact, it was great to be able to talk to him because we'd had a couple of emails in suggesting his name and people that reference his work. So it was fantastic to be able to talk to him. And of course, he's become a Fujifilm shooter. It was the XT3 that he took up the Himalayas. There is one particular scene where the camera fails on him. He can't see the back screen, and he paws over the Canon that's next to him and says, "Canon, come back, all is forgiven." But of course then he realises that he'd forgotten to press the little button with the display, putting it to the eyepiece or the LCD only, and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
Anyway,
read those manuals.
Yeah. I think he said that. He even said I should read the manuals. So this week's guest is Thomas Heaton. Thomas, when I was doing a little research, I did what I'm sure 99% of the population would do. I Googled your name, and up popped, under the People Also Ask section, where is Thomas Heaton from, how old is Thomas Heaton, and is landscape photography an art? Now, I think it still is. What would you say? Is it less of a niche these days?
Well, first of all, congratulations on getting through to me and not Thomas Heaton, the footballer, the goalkeeper who.
No, you came up before. No, you came up before them.
Burnley.
No,
am I ahead of him?
Yes.
Oh, get in. That's good to know. Yeah, I've been having a secret war with this guy for about 5 years now. So finally, I'm on top, which is good news. Okay, so, wow, deep question to begin with. Is landscape photography art or still art or more of an art?
Yeah.
Yes, of course it is. Absolutely still is art. And I don't see how it could be less of an art now than it once was. I suppose with the introduction of technology, perhaps, but not really.
Yeah,
those are just more tools.
Yeah, I asked a very similar question, albeit a different genre, see, earlier, to a reasonably well-heeled and certainly well-versed street photographer. And I said, is street photography still an art? Is it still a niche? Because now, with the introduction of cameras that everybody can use, a lot more people are street photographers suddenly. So is it still that niche that it ever was?
Okay, so yeah, if we're talking about a niche, no, probably not, because I think it's so much more accessible. All you've got to do is look at the ridiculous statistics of Instagram to see how many images are posted on a daily basis. Now, granted, they're not all landscapes, but I tell you what, a lot of them are. Whether those people necessarily know that they're taking landscapes, it could just be somebody with a Google Pixel or an iPhone, whatever, 11, I think we're up to now. Yeah. Those have incredibly good cameras. And if people are just out and about on holiday, or they see something, maybe some nice mist or some unusual clouds or something, they'll take a photograph, they'll post it to Instagram. So the genre has massively opened up, and the popularity has grown more and more, but I don't necessarily think it's just a increase in popularity of landscape photography. I think it's more of an increase in popularity of the outdoors.
Now, you've carved out this hugely successful YouTube presence. Is it a presence or is it a career? What do you call it?
Oh God, I don't know. I wish I knew what it was.
I'm not sure when a presence becomes a career. I'm thinking it must be a career for you.
Yeah, well, it was never intended to be that way. Of course. But yeah, that's how it's evolved, because, you start off doing it just as for fun, and it's still fun. But when it picks up traction and opportunities start to open up, then you take advantage of those opportunities, which in turn leads to more opportunities. And before you know it, you can kind of look at your situation and think, well, hang on a minute, maybe I can do this for a job. Maybe I can do this for a full-time living. And that's hard to say no to. when you don't enjoy your day job. So, of course, you make the leap and become full-time, as I did. And so, yeah, I guess you could say that, but I wouldn't necessarily say YouTube is my full-time career. I always prefer to be called a photographer rather than a YouTuber. Now, of course, I'm not ignorant to the fact that none of this would be possible without YouTube. I just see it as a very, very powerful marketing tool and storytelling tool, which in turn supports my photography.
I want to talk about your trip to Nepal, actually, which I know there was sort of equal. Well, it was a hard trip, and we'll come to that in a moment. But as you head toward this next landmark, or if you like landscape figure of 500,000 subs, it's not that far away. Did you think it would grow in the way that it has?
No, not really, because YouTube is so inconsistent with the numbers. So you can have good weeks, bad weeks, good months, bad months. So I remember for the first few months rather, or even possibly the first year on YouTube, I wasn't really aware of the numbers. I saw view counts, but that was about it. So no, I never became conscious of it. I didn't even realize you could monetize a video until about 6 months in or something like that. And somebody said, "Oh, you could," and of course you get about $20, so it's not great.
It's a bit depressing, isn't it? Really?
Yeah, oh, no, it is, and that's why you can never rely on the ad revenue alone. But here's the funny thing about YouTube ad revenue is, yes, it pays pennies, but without putting the ads on your videos don't get seen, because obviously Google is a business, therefore they want to sell advertising to their clients. So if you do not have ads on your videos, YouTube will not share your video out amongst the masses.
Isn't that interesting? Because a lot of people say don't monetize until you get to X, Y, and Z, without realizing perhaps that their channel won't gain any traction if they don't do it. It's the necessary evil.
It's actually very, very damaging to not monetize your channel. I get it. There's lots of integrity involved and people don't like ads on the videos. And I fully respect that 100%. And I wish it didn't work like that, but it's the world we live in, and it's a shame. But yeah, that's just the way it is. So if you have a video with no ads on, there is a clear difference in the amount of eyeballs that land on that video.
Your style is very approachable. As a photographer, let's call it a YouTuber just for a moment, but as a photographer, as a YouTuber, as a person, you seem to me to be one of those people you'd like to spend time in a pub with, because there's no great act, or there's no, what you see is what you get, and I would imagine you are exactly the same in real life as you are within your films. Would that be fair?
Oh, without a doubt, yeah.
That seems an unfair question, but
I don't think it's possible to have a facade on YouTube, because there's no way you could keep it up. And what I love doing more than anything is I love being miserable. I think it's great. I think there are too many people out there projecting false positivity
where everything's awesome.
Yeah, and I think if you're hurting on the inside, just make allow yourself to be vulnerable. And what that does is it makes the good times better, because when you show real excitement, people know it's genuine.
So I followed your recent trip to Nepal, and there were so many things we could talk. I could go well back a good few years and talk about stuff you've done, but I was enthralled by this trip to Nepal, where you seem to find a new level of suffering for your art, I've got to say, Thomas.
Yeah, I remember. What I like to do. If it's easy, it just doesn't feel earned.
Well, I remember in particular when you got, and I was relaying this to my family, saying, when this chap got to 4,600 meters, even a 100-meter hike uphill to grab a sunset picture became a bit of a chore. I mean, you're a fit chap. Did you think that this trip was going to be as hard as it was?
Yes, I had my suspicions, because I live at sea level. So if I look out of my window now, I can see the beach, which is very nice. Beautiful, but also it means that I've never had the opportunity to do anything at altitude. The highest I've ever been is about 2,900 meters. Right. And that was fine, but that was just up and down in one day. So this is sustained high altitude. And, it's funny, because with altitude, you can't predict it. There's no tests for it. Your fitness means nothing. It's just you can have a good day and a bad day. And when I got sick, I think it was it was in Gokyo.
It was 4,800, wasn't it? 4,800, I think.
Yeah, 4,800. Yeah. And it was, it was pretty bad. It was just like, I suppose, it was just like having the flu. That's the only way to describe it. Is imagine having a really, just having the flu, but you're not home in your nice, warm, comfortable bedroom. You're in some disgusting mountain hut where it's minus 20 degrees outside and minus 10 inside. So it is really challenging. If I'd have continued up, because the day that I left was the day of the big high mountain pass, which is about, 5,500 maybe, something like that. It's a big day. And I couldn't face that day. It would have been dangerous. That would have meant severe altitude sickness, possibly, which is fluid on the lungs, fluid on the brain, and a helicopter ride out of there. And I didn't want to do that.
So you had acute altitude sickness, didn't you, I think?
Yeah, acute altitude sickness. So sort of mild to moderate, not pleasant at all, but you can still function, and it's generally okay. But the only way I could cure it, and the cure is instant, is walk downhill. So the day everybody set off over the mountain pass, I said my goodbyes, and I arranged to meet them in 3 days' time on the other side of the mountain. And I began to walk downhill. And I set off on that morning feeling like I had the flu. And for every 50 to 100 meters of descent, you just feel better. And I remember after about an hour of walking, I was on top of the world. I thought, what? I've made the wrong decision. I should have gone over the mountain.
Did you almost turn round?
No, that's the problem. It's misleading. You think you're better. You're not. You're just lowering in altitude. And it's the worst thing I could have actually done was turn around. But you feel like you can. So, but you need time to rest, of course. So it's like drinking a bottle of water. Imagine being dehydrated and feeling terrible, and then you have this bottle of water and you drink that water and you feel amazing. Well, that's the same. Drinking the bottle of water is just like walking downhill. So after a day of walking, got to the next village, 1,000 meters lower. My God, it's like a new man.
I know. I noticed it in the films. Yeah.
felt great. I had a good night's sleep. I ate lots of food. The worst thing about altitude is you lose your appetite. So and that's a downward spiral, because of course you don't eat and you get weaker and weaker. So I'd gone down, rested for a day. Then my body acclimatized and I continued back up. And I ended up going back up to 4,600 meters, which is not too far off from where I got sick. Only the second time round, I wasn't sick. The second time round, I was acclimatized fully. So I remember for the first time on the trip, we were chasing the sunset. And you can't chase altitude, but on this day we were almost running up this hill at 4,600, and it was all because I had a couple of days back at lower altitude and then started again going up. So if anybody's listening to this who's thinking about doing a trek like this, what the doctor told me is just because you get altitude sickness does not mean that your trip is over.
No.
All you've got to do is just rest, maybe drop down a bit, and then your body will adapt. And that's exactly what happened. So actually, by the end of the trip, I was on top of the world. And then when I got home, my God, my body was full of red blood cells. And I do a lot of rock climbing. I remember meeting my friends for a climb after I'd been away. And I just was going and going and going. I never got fatigued because I had so much red blood cells carrying oxygen around my body. It was fantastic.
It was probably one of the most emotional videos I've seen you in, that moment where you did have to turn back. That was you left the camera running, and I think that surprised a few people, didn't it?
Well, yeah, I did. Because I remember I set the camera up to record just so I could quickly do an intro to my video, which is explaining what's happened, basically how I've left the group. Now, if it was just me by myself, it would not in any way have been emotional, because it's fine, right? It's just me and I'll just leave. But because I was with a group of friends, and because I wanted to go to Everest Base Camp, so badly for so long, it was really emotional. I think the fatigue and altitude also makes you more emotional, and the fact that, it's hard. There's no heating, no running water. You're not eating properly. You're exhausted every day. But I intended to just do a quick piece to camera, and I found it quite therapeutic. So I just started yabbering on. And there were a couple of moments where I had to stop, and I thought, okay, well, I'll just edit those out, no problem. But then when I was in the edit suite, I actually found that it was it showed much more of how it was and how I was feeling. So I didn't edit them out, and I just left in those moments of awkward silence.
Well,
I turned away from the camera.
I tell you what, Thomas, it worked. I know you didn't mean for it to work in that particular way, but I read down the comments that quite recently on that film, and it seems a bit lazy to take the very top one that I read on that particular day, but there was a chap called Troy. I don't know whether this particular one rings a bell, but he said, I love your honesty and passion. He said, you're such an inspiration to me. A half-broken soldier. I've had 32 surgeries in order to keep my legs. I've lost so much from military injuries. A lot of that was hobbies. And he goes on to talk about some of the hobbies that he could no longer do. But then when he was in hospital, somebody bought him a camera and a laptop opened. And guess what happened? It was your YouTube channel that popped up first. And he said, you have no idea, and I can't tell you with mere words, how much you inspired me to start to learn and love photography like I do today. And those were the kind of comments. I think he said, as an army guy, you really touched people with this trip and your honesty. Did you feel that at the time?
No, I never feel that, ever.
Yeah. Wow.
I mean, it's an amazing comment, and it's funny how often I receive comments and emails of that, and it's always so moving and overwhelming. Yeah, it's amazing to hear that.
Well,
it really is.
You should read down those comments. I'm sure you have.
No, I do. But do you know what? I sometimes don't read a lot of comments on my more emotionally invested videos because there's always that negative one. And I wish I should focus more on the positive ones like that.
Do you know? I don't think I saw any on that particular. And if I did, I filtered them out. Let's get geeky. You took an XT. Right. You took an XT3. Clearly, you had a weight advantage above the group that I was watching around you, who had their heavy lenses and their DSLR sets.
The problem with having a weight advantage is that everybody just goes, oh, well, your pack only weighs 12 kilograms.
They gave it all to
carry this, and this.
Well, there was the screen gate at one moment, which turned out to be user error.
But that's funny. I always leave those in. That's just me.
I thought that was
that's me in a nutshell, right there.
Was it the right decision to take the Fujifilm gear? Did you enjoy using it?
Oh, without a doubt. I loved using it. And what surprised me more than anything was the quality of the images. They're comparable or on a par with my 5D Mark IV images. I haven't done any scientific tests, and I don't think I ever will. But when I open the images and look at them, I don't look at them and think, ooh, these are on a crop sensor or whatever. Yeah. I just see fantastic image quality. And it was definitely the right decision, especially because of the video quality, the size and the weight. And it's just a nice camera to use.
Did the batteries hold out okay in the extreme cold of the Himalayas? Because that's one thing people do talk a lot about.
Surprisingly, yes. Because when I tested the camera, my biggest disappointment with the whole system was how quickly the battery sort of needed changing. Battery exhausted. It was probably less than an hour and a half in the field, maybe 20 minutes worth of footage and 3 or 4 photographs. And I was like, oh, this is going to be a problem. But I think it's because I was using the camera in a different way. I was testing everything. I left the camera switched on whilst I moved to another location to shoot some images, some videos. So I was just treating it like I do my Canon, because I'm used to those batteries lasting forever. Yeah. But in Nepal, I was so much more conscious of the battery, so I just used it more sensibly, and it was never an issue.
Do you mind running me through the sort of typical Thomas Heaton kit bag? It can be Canon or Fujifilm. I'm intrigued to see the sort of focal lengths you take out, that kind of thing.
With the Fuji, I have just again kind of the Holy Trinity equivalent, which I think is the 10
to 10-24. That'll be
10 to 20. Yeah, 10 to 24, which is a lovely lens, and then the kit lens
18 to 55,
which is okay, and then the 55 to 200, which is the best surprise of all, because I wasn't expecting that lens to be super high quality, because it's the lower end in terms you can get a more expensive version of that lens, but it's a lot bigger and heavier, and for me the priority was weight, so I went for that lens, which was cheaper but also smaller and lighter. But the quality coming out of that, fantastic.
I've always thought that people photography and reacting to, now this comes from a person photographer, but I've always thought that people photography reacting to humanity and what happens with humans is, I've always thought, well, it's a far more emotive form of photography than anything else. But there is emotion to landscape work, isn't there? Clearly, I can see it by your passion. I know that's a word that's really overused these days, but it's clear you have it, Thomas.
Well, for me, the emotion comes mostly from the amount of effort that the photographer has put into an image, because you have to suffer for your art, right? Now, I can totally understand people photography and capturing that decisive moment, and the emotion that comes with a scene unfolding, such as war photography or something like that. But for me, the emotion coming from people photography is what's happening more in front of the camera, I suppose. The emotion with landscapes, for me, certainly is what's gone on behind the camera. So, it's the hardship and the effort of getting to a place, the patience of waiting. Now, of course, you could shoot natural disasters and things, and there would be emotion there. And what's great is you can capture a landscape as it changes over time. But it's very difficult to capture a single landscape image that would evoke emotion in the viewer unless they knew the story behind the image. I have ups and downs emotionally all the time. And I look at my body of work, and what I see is that I don't have a style. Okay, you don't look at my Instagram feed and every image has the same color palette and the same subject. They vastly vary. And I do wonder a lot of that is to do with my state of mind, because I do create quite dark, somber images.
Yeah.
And actually sometimes I really go after those images.
Are you patient?
Yes, 100% patient, but YouTube doesn't always allow me to to use my patience to the fullest, because the problem with what I do is you have to constantly feed the machine.
Yes.
And usually I like to have a back catalogue of videos ready to go, so I never have that pressure. But unfortunately, it's not always like that. So
that's dovetailed so well with this social media. I want to close on a couple of social media things and then an emotive question, but. You've got your blog, you've got Flickr, there's your Facebook, there's Twitter, Instagram, you've got YouTube. I think you've mentioned the fact you do feel a pressure. How much pressure is there to keep feeding that machine, as you call it?
There's a lot of pressure. More so with YouTube, for me anyway. Instagram, I don't... my Instagram account could be deleted tomorrow. I wouldn't care less. I'm one of those. I don't really like Instagram. It's difficult to spend 2 days photographing an image and then have it only seen on a 1-inch screen. I think Instagram's there. I do it because everyone does it, but so I don't care too much for Instagram. So I don't therefore feel I need to constantly upload. I can't even remember when I posted my last image on Instagram.
Yes, it's not been of late.
No. But I use Instagram mainly to promote my YouTube channel. Twitter, I stopped using a long time ago because it's quite vicious. It's too easy for people to drag you into a conversation or debate or talk directly about you and then tag you in it. So it's not very nice. I've seen that before. So I stopped using Twitter a long time ago because there's too many bad eggs on Twitter. Facebook, again, I stopped using it many years ago because I don't really like Facebook, just the whole data mining thing. So the only pressure I feel is YouTube, and that's because of that's what I put the most into emotionally, and it's what I get the most out of as well. And I have a schedule. I think if I was just if I won the lottery tomorrow and could retire, then I think I would be I would be more than happy to wait weeks and weeks and weeks for the perfect conditions and get that one perfect photograph. But unfortunately with YouTube, that's not the case. I like to put out a video on a regularly scheduled basis. And that sometimes means you've only got today, and then you have to produce and deliver. And it's not necessarily a bad thing, actually, because it forces you to be more creative and to get out there and see more places.
Finally, on your Twitter profile, which I'm now that we talk about Twitter, I appreciate you probably wrote quite a while ago. But
yes, I will have done. I don't think I've opened Twitter.
Well, let me remind you then. It's your succinct profile, because it has to be, doesn't it? Reads, photographer, traveller, outdoor enthusiast. I share my life with Charlotte and Monty the dog. Living the dream. Are you, do you think?
Without a doubt. When I take stock of what I do and my life, for sure. I'm incredibly lucky. I've just spent a month in the USA with 4 very good friends, road tripping in a 1979 trailer. I make a reasonable living, and it's absolutely living the dream. But with any job, it has its ups and its downs. So it's certainly not a bed of roses, and there is a lot of work, a lot of stress, a lot of pressure to get to the point that I'm at now. But when I actually stop and take stock, I am very, very thankful. In Nepal, when I met a lot of the porters and the guides that work out there, and you just have a conversation with these guys about what they do on a daily basis, and then I look at me complaining about the screen not working on my Fuji camera, which probably costs more than these guys' homes that they live in up in Nepal. I'm very, very blessed to do what I do, and I am living the dream. I don't think there's anything else that I would rather do right now.
Well, that seems a good place to close it, except for the fact I'm a Columbo fan, and there's always just one more thing.
Just one more thing.
And I've just
is there one more thing?
I've just thought
if
of
there
one.
is, you've got to do it in the Columbo voice.
I've just thought of I can't do the Columbo voice. That deep gravelly. Just one more thing.
Just one
more thing.
Yeah.
What's the landscape scene you haven't yet captured? The one that's there. The fish that got away at the moment, but the scene that you want.
Do you know what? I just don't get lucky with fog and mist. It's what I seek the most, and it's just so rare for me to find it. I have a couple of images that are nice, foggy, misty days, but if I had one magical power to be able to switch on any kind of weather, anything, it would be the mist switch. And I just can't find it. I see photographers out there, and all they're doing is putting out images of mist. And where is this mist? It's never there. And when it's forecast, it's always wrong. So that's where I would love.
But that's the thing. That's the thing that you would like. But what's the scene that you would like in that mist or without the mist?
Oh, the scene. Okay, so I would like to improve my woodland photography, active volcanoes and icebergs.
Yes.
Yeah, for sure. Icebergs and active volcanoes. If I can get them in one scene, then I'll have just won the lottery.
With the mist switch, obviously.
With a bit of mist.
With a bit of mist.
Nice. I'd say, wow, good question. I mean, I'm pretty lucky, actually. This just goes to show how much I am living the dream, because I've pretty much photographed every scene you can think of.
My thanks to Thomas Heaton this week. Absolute pleasure talking to him. And you know how some YouTubers, you really hope that they're going to be absolutely the same in person, even though I know this was an interview down the line, but you hope they're going to be the same in person when you're talking, communicating with them, as they are on their YouTube films. I have to say, Tom Heaton is exactly that kind of person. What you see on those movies is what you get in real life.
Yeah,
talk to him,
that's good.
It's wonderful.
And actually, that's always the sign of a good YouTube channel, isn't it?
Yeah.
Personality. We know that.
Yeah.
That's why ours are rubbish. Okay, I have a question from...
I thought I was going first.
Oh, yeah.
No, you go first now. I don't want to tread on your unencumbered feet.
Unencumbered.
Go on, unencumbered.
Okay, this is a big one.
Oh, is it?
Big one.
Oh, is this the one?
Have you got a button for big one?
Oh, yeah. I don't know if I've got the right button. Oh, no, that's the bouquet chicken. Hang on a minute. Where's the button? Oh, it's number 1.
Warning.
Hey. Okay, so...
I stuck it up there the other day, so it would always have the warning. It was right next to bouquet chicken.
George Fakinos, now friend of the show, George Fakinos.
Yeah,
absolutely. Now, this is quite a long question, and some of you in the Fujifilm community will relate to this question. Dear Kevin and Neil, I am not sending this email to ask something, but to express my disgust and frustration at a specific photographer, Tatsu Suzuki, who I saw in one of the X100V's promotional videos.
Yes.
What is wrong with us? What is wrong with humanity? And why on earth Fujifilm uploaded this video? He is a street photographer, and if I am correct, the subject of most street photographers are people. However, he does not seem to respect them at all. Don't get me wrong, I do not want to judge his skills and his approach as a photographer, but his morals as a person. If people like him continue to act like this, then I bet that in a few years there will be laws that will forbid street photography for everybody. Who gave him the right to do this to the rest of us? I am an amateur photographer and I love every aspect of it. it. But today, this was not the case. Today, I wanted to put the camera aside because this is not what photography is supposed to be. I don't know if you've seen the video or if you're able to comment, since you, Kevin, are a Fujifilm ambassador, and Neil, well, you, Neil, are Kevin's good friend. So you have to support him. Although he did not let you drive in Switzerland.
Oh, that's true.
But I would like to hear your thoughts about it. Am I wrong to get that frustrated with him? Thanks again, and keep up the amazing work you do. Okay, so George, you ended that sentence by saying, am I wrong to get that frustrated with him? And to be brutally honest, I think you are wrong. Frankly, I totally understand where you're coming from. However, that video, which has been taken down, so there's two facets to this conversation. One is the video itself.
The video is still around, funnily enough.
The video has been
you
still
can
around.
Find it, yeah.
Of course it is, and
it's taken down from Fujifilm.
Correct, yeah. So that's the other facet. Were Fujifilm correct in either uploading it and then B, removing it? So we'll answer the question about
Shall we flesh it out a little bit, by the way, for those that are non-Fujifilm shooters that won't necessarily seen that. This is a reasonably well-known street photographer who has a particular style in the way he works. He uses zone focusing, and he's very in the face of people. I think that's what George is finding a little bit disturbing about the way that he works. But in essence, he's a street photographer.
Okay, so the video is of Tatsuo walking around the streets of Tokyo, I believe it was, and he's basically being a street photographer. So he's walking against the flow of the traffic of people. He's using the camera at roughly face level, but not at his face. And he's allowing people to get very close to him as they walk past him, and he's taking pictures. Okay, he's not using flash. He's not jumping in front of them. He's not chasing them down the street. He is effectively zone focusing, but at head level, face level. Now, most street photographers who are interested in this style of photography will be doing zone focusing, but typically they do it lower down their body because then they can be a little bit more unobtrusive. Yeah. So what Tatsuo is doing is basically doing what everybody else does, but just with a slightly different perspective. Now, I don't think that what he was doing was wrong at all. I think that it is a step back from the likes of Bruce Gilden, from Doogie Wallace, who are very much in your face, very much jump in front of people, take the picture, and then run off.
Gilden is it's so obtrusive, it makes no odds.
Absolutely, but that's his
huge
style.
Flash in their face.
That's absolutely his style, and I have more opinions on Bruce Gilden's style and Doogie Wallace's style than I do on Tatsuo, and that doesn't mean that my opinions are right. It certainly doesn't mean that what Bruce Gilden and Doogie Wallace do is wrong. I mean, heaven forbid. I mean, Doogie Wallace has had an entire series on BBC Two about him, so he must be doing something right. Martin Parr, similar kind of style.
That series, to come back to Doogie, is it Dougie?
Doogie, don't know.
Yeah, because funny enough, a friend of his came the other day to the first birthday celebration thing. He calls him Dougie.
Dougie, Doogie.
But then other people call him Doogie.
Whatever.
Anyway,
but great picture. I mean, I've got some of his books. I've got his books. I've got Gilden's books.
But his the one that I think was on BBC Two, wasn't it? Was it Channel 4? BBC Two? Was it?
Stags and Hens, I think it was, wasn't it? In Blackpool.
That's particularly.
And then there was Harrodsburg as well.
The Harrods one is the one I'm talking about. Yeah. I know the Stags and Hens one, but the Harrods one is. I mean, he doorsteps people outside Harrods.
Yeah, and he
so much so that he actually puts his camera inside an open-top Ferrari and bang flashes. Somebody who's at the either at the steering wheel or on the passenger seat.
Indeed, and so that's not Tatsuo is not doing anything like that. Tatsuo is walking the streets. He is just walking regularly, admittedly with a camera held at kind of face level, and he's taking pictures. Now,
some people have said it looks rather arrogant the way that he does it.
Well, is it less arrogant the way he does that, or is it more arrogant to do it at the hip level and try and hide the fact you're doing it?
That's a good point. I think maybe it's the way he acts with people that his obtrusiveness is what people mean by the arrogance.
Yes, but if you look at the video, I don't think he is.
Because there's almost like because I'm kind of on George's side, but kind of on your side all at the same time. But when in this particular film, I looked at it and thought, does he actually care about what he's taking?
No, he's very much a spray and pray type photographer.
Oh God, is there any skill in this? It's just bang, and then a kind of almost like smirkish kind of smile.
Yeah, I mean,
and I think that's what comes across in this. And I've seen other films where that doesn't come across in quite the same way.
Yeah, absolutely, and I think that the fact is he had a camera crew behind him filming him for this, so
maybe he's playing to the camera.
What you see is slightly different, almost definitely. Yeah. But at the end of the day, I reckon if Vivian Mayer had a Fujifilm X100V back in in the 1940s and 50s, she would probably photograph us a very similar way. It's candid. It's a documentary of people on the streets. Now, my question, not specifically to you, George, but to a lot of people, and I've had not physical, but verbal abuse on my own website about street photography.
You have, yeah.
And my question is, do you have a dash cam in your car? Do you avoid CCTV everywhere? Do your children ever look at pictures of the past?
It's the execution. The execution though is different.
But the execution is no different. What he did, the execution is no different to how a vast majority of street
CCTV vans not running up to you and
it's different. And also, Christ, it would be a terrible world if we all had to do the same thing in the same way. Yeah. His books sell, his pictures sell, he's got exhibitions, he's a well-established photographer because he's got something that's slightly different. It's a perspective that's slightly different. Yeah. And I commend him for that. I don't think in any way, shape or form, I couldn't shoot like that. I wouldn't have the bottle to do it.
Have you ever been verbally abused on the street? Never mind on your website.
No.
Has anybody ever? No. I think we've talked about
not
this.
Once.
No, you
haven't.
Not
once. And that's probably because I don't have the bottle to shoot like a tattoo.
Yeah.
I implement exactly the same technique. It's just his higher up.
Gilden, I remember in one of those, there's a great film on YouTube, isn't there, about Bruce Gilden, and one guy verbally attacks him and he says, I didn't know it was your street,
Yeah, well, there was that woman in...
And he'll bite back, won't he?
There's that woman in Derby as well, when he's filming in Derby for, I think he's filming a documentary for BJP, and this woman with a handbag runs up to him. She's like, I'm going to hit you with my handbag.
What did he do?
So they just laughed and had a little chat in the end. But they were outside like something like Iceland or something in Derby, Derby town centre.
That famous hunting ground for street photography.
Yeah. But, so honestly, my honest opinion is that George goes on to say that eventually people like him will stop us having any street photography permissions whatsoever. It's nothing to do with him. Our street photography permissions are being eroded all the time. You cannot take pictures on continental Europe without asking people's permission if you want to publish them. Luckily in the UK, if you're in public place still at the moment you can, and the same in the United States. But those permissions are being eradicated, and that's because of big business. That's because of people like Facebook and stuff, who are our trust of online is at its lowest it's ever been. Our trust of the internet, and so that is passive, and that is manifesting itself with the decision makers, who are often overpaid bureaucrats who've never picked up a camera in their entire life or ever looked at anything artistic apart from a bottle of wine and some...
Say what you mean, Kev. Say what you mean.
Something else. And, they're making these decisions and it's rubbish. It's terrible. And, eventually it will go away and we will not have... we will not have the luxury of education from pictures of the past, understanding. You look at those pictures Tatsuo took, and that gives us an understanding of the people, the culture, the characters, what they're wearing, the clothing, the weather, all of that stuff. And it's basically I'm gonna say it.
Hang on.
Warning.
I'm gonna say it. It's snowflakes. It's snowflakes that are
George, you're not
worrying.
One of these, by the way, George.
You, George.
No, not you, George.
Absolutely.
You're a friend of the show.
Yes, absolutely not you. Because at the end of the day, George, you sent the question in, and it's formed a very, very
God, I mean, you should
very open discussion.
I'm going to have to share my 5 milligrams of Ramipril. Other blood pressure tablets are available with Kev. You should see how red he's gone, George.
Oh, it's making me angry. I have to say,
what's the bloody word?
Apoplectic.
Thank you.
And it's not absolutely about you, George. I totally appreciate that. I'm saying here that it would be a boring world if we all took the same pictures, but also it'd be a boring world if we all had the same opinions. So, vice versa. So, the fact is, my personal opinion on street photography is that it's documenting what's going on. The people are walking past him. He is not chasing them. He is not behaving like Bruce Gilden. He is not running in front of them. He's not flashing them. They are walking past him. He has the camera in front of his head, face level.
Right.
It's pretty obvious that he's likely to take a picture. They can choose to turn their backs, and in some cases in the film, they do turn their backs. Sometimes they walk across the road.
That's true.
And that's it. Isn't that the same as deciding whether you want to walk under a ladder or not when the ladder's up in the streets? There's a ladder there. I'm going to walk under it or I'm not. My choice. I can decide to do that. Now, on the flip side, though, or on the other part of that question, I'm thinking Neil's desperately trying to press buttons and stuff over there, wrapping me up, but I'm still going.
Move on.
Were Fujifilm right to pull that video?
Oh, yes, that was a good point. Were they? Now, on this point, I personally think they were wrong. They should have had the courage of their convictions and stuck with it.
I also think that the Fujifilm should have left that video up.
Yeah.
There's a couple of things that must have happened. So I know the marketing team involved in making these films, and I know that the effort, the commitment, the blood, sweat, and tears that go into.
I mean, I've made a couple of those films with you, and there's an awful lot of work that goes.
And there's a lot that goes on behind the scenes, and I know it's a very personal project for many people at Fujifilm. And so the film will have come to them. They will have watched it and looked at it and made suggestions, etc. And then at that point, perhaps if they thought actually this isn't what we want, then maybe they should have decided not to show it. However, I'm not throwing the blame at Fujifilm. I'm throwing the blame at the people, probably a minority of people who said this is not what street photography should be, and so they pulled it to protect their dignity, because they're a Japanese company, and that's what Japanese people do. They never say no. For example, we shall consider is the best you get.
Is that right?
Yeah.
The Japanese way?
Can you make the X100V have a little coffee machine coming out the back? We shall consider.
We shall consider.
Yes.
Okay. I quite like that.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
What a nice way to do
absolutely
business.
Absolutely beautiful. Yeah, absolutely beautiful. If ever you look at any of their emails or their marketing messages that come when there's a bug in firmware or something, it's always like, to our dedicated Fujifilm people, customers, we are very sorry that we have, disappointed
bowing
you.
As you're doing.
We're very sorry that we have disappointed you on this occasion. We will work harder. And it's always self-depreciative like that. So my answer, George, is that I think that it's street photography. Street photography manifests itself in many different ways, and wherever you are in the world right now, I imagine I'm sat here in Neil's studio. He's probably got security cameras and various other things filming me.
Well, I hope not.
And
things that go on in here.
Yeah, stuff that's going on in here now. I'm going to put my pajamas back on if that's the case. So yeah, I mean, you know what? It's a great question, and kudos for sending it in. I expected us to get a question on that. It was a huge thread on Fuji Rumors. I've had numerous emails about it. I don't know Tatsuo at all. Never met him. In fact, up until this video, I'd never really looked at much of his work. I love his work. I just think it's one of those. It's just one of those things. A couple of people have flapped their arms hard enough. And it's
and the world's come crashing.
Yeah,
down.
The world's come crashing down.
But I tell you what, George, come over here a little bit closer. Come here, George. George, come on. Let me say something.
You're our favourite listener, and we mean it.
You are a friend of the show, and you know that. Right, blimey, that's...
You can have a go now.
Well, should we do a question, or should we do a quick...
have you got a whiskey?
A couple of... There's loads in the back over there, yeah. There are a couple of quickies, if you pardon the expression, then into the book. Kevin Turner. Actually, this is one really I wanted to put to Andreas last week, and I didn't. So I wonder if you've got any feelings about this, Kev. I mean, you're in the inner sanctum. Kevin Turner, based in Motril, southern Spain. Do you know Motril? Is that anywhere near to where you go?
Yeah. Vaguely. Motril, yeah. I don't think I've ever been there, but
retired photography and art history lecturer, now running photography workshops in Spain. Oh, maybe you two should get together. How will the big photo companies like Canon, Fuji, Nikon and Olympus deal with smartphone cameras becoming better and better and better? At some stage, it'll undoubtedly affect the big players. Will they start making phones, perhaps? Do you think Fujifilm would ever make a phone?
Well, it's interesting. It's interesting because last week you asked Andreas something.
Did I ask a similar question?
No, it wasn't that. Maybe it wasn't you, but somebody asked what the future is for. I think it was to do with 8K cameras and stuff like that. And one of the things that he mentioned was that he'd personally like to see, and I'm fairly sure this isn't something that's on the kind of drawing board right now, is that he'd like to see 5G memory card, 5G SIM cards in cameras.
Maybe we did touch. Oh no, we
it was
touched.
a different. It was about the future.
Slightly,
and an automatic upload into the cloud and various other things like that.
You remained exceptionally indifferent to that one.
Well, I think it's a great idea as long as it's not in
what? In a cave.
All my words have fallen out. As long as it's not as a replacement to memory cards.
Okay. Right.
Okay. Because there are some cameras that are now thinking or doing internal memory only and stuff.
No.
And that's just bad. So,
although one day maybe that will happen, and we'll say, "Oh, God, Grandad, can you remember those times we used to have cards in cameras?" and people thought that was the only way to do it.
Maybe.
And the other one was from Harriet Derslow, photographer in Yarring. Advice, please, for cleaning sensors. I've tried wet swiping products, sticky bud systems, and just about everything else, but I've not come out with the best system yet. Any suggestions? Well, can I tell you what I do? I just put my headphones down. I bring my camera to the sink, and I wash the sensor under the sink, turn it off, turn it upside down, let it dry out.
Don't listen to him. Don't listen to him. He's lying.
Just perfect. And you'll find, Harriet, that the camera's perfectly clean.
Whatever you do, don't listen to him, Harriet. However, I've never cleaned a sensor.
What about a toothbrush?
I've never cleaned a
electric toothbrush. You have to be very, very careful, as Harriet knows. I mean, it's not for the faint-hearted cleaning sensors.
I've never cleaned a sensor in my life.
No way.
I would imagine when my cameras go off for servicing, whatever, they do that for me.
That must look like a star scene, spots across your...
Yeah, but I never shoot at like F8 or beyond, to be honest with you. You'd only ever really see it at F16 and beyond.
Yeah. That's going to be my challenge to you today. Go and shoot an F22 scene and have a look. Do a fairly blank wall, maybe something like a nice cream-coloured wall.
Well, bringing it back to seriousness and Harriet's question, my answer would be to send it to, or take it to... is Harriet in the UK?
Yarring. Yes, that's UK, yeah.
So...
I don't think it's close. Where's Yarring?
I don't know, but take it to the...
I'm looking it up.
The photography show in Birmingham, which we will both be at. I will be doing some talks. You'll be there.
I'm just going to be drinking beer.
I am going to also at the photography show. By the way, I will on the show notes to this show on the FujiCast.co.uk. I will put the 20% discount for tickets for those of you that want tickets. Right. But Fujifilm will do sensor cleaning free on there. They always do. And throughout the UK, they are often at. They do what they call touch and try days, which I always think sounds very peculiar. Touch and try days, where you can go along, get your sensors cleaned, and try out new gear and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, my advice is to get. Look, that's a Nancy Griffiths album there. I love Nancy Griffiths.
Yarrington Town.
Yeah, Yarrington.
Which is not Yarring at all.
Yarrington Town is one of her songs. Yeah. So stuff like that. Sorry, Harriet, we went right off on a tangent. Then Neil got up.
Oh, look, a squirrel!
Neil got out of his seat, which took me right by surprise.
Yeah, I don't usually do that.
I've never seen him move.
Yeah, that's like a captain moving away from the controls.
Yeah.
You were okay. You just crack on.
Get them done by Fujifilm.
On one of my rabbit hole things. I didn't realise this happens, by the way, but I'll tell you anyway because I know you feel the same way as me about flying. I think it might have been because I was watching some pictures of those winds that we had recently with aeroplanes landing at Heathrow in those extreme winds. Oh my God!
See that one that landed and then took off again?
Oh no! And but there was a particular video that I ended up on, which was an EasyJet one, which showed the first day of new pilots as they get a chance to land an aircraft full of 150 to 200 people. Oh my God. And they actually went back along the aircraft and told people, said, did you know this is the captain's or the first officer's first ever attempt at landing a passenger plane? Didn't see people's looks in their eyes saying, thanks very much for the information.
I'm glad they told them after they landed.
No, it was before.
Oh no.
As they were coming in.
Oh no. Oh no. Yeah, I wouldn't be like that. I wouldn't like that.
No,
yeah.
Anyway.
Some of those pilots look about 15.
I know. Does your dad know you're out this late?
Okay, book.
Anyway, book. Yeah, let's go for a book.
Book.
Now, this one, I absolutely love Jane Bowen's work.
Yeah, so we have Jane Bowen's Exposures as a book of the week. So Jane Bowen, for those of you, it's B-O-W-N, not Brown or any other kind of connotation. Bowen, B-O-W-N. So she was a portrait photographer, or a news photographer, if you like, with a portrait stance for The Observer for 60-odd years, I think. She only died recently, I think 2014, 15, something like that. Yeah. And so she's got many books out, of course, but this one that we're talking about is called Exposures. Many of her favourite, or many of her most famous portraits are in here. I'm literally just flicking through now. We've got Margaret Thatcher, 1983. We've got
the Thatcher one's interesting
Diana Dawes.
because apparently a lot of people had trouble photographing Margaret Thatcher because she's such a dominant force of a woman. Yet Jane Bowen was apparently very good to send into those situations because she was very disarming.
Well, interestingly, this picture of Margaret Thatcher, which is on page 132, it looks almost like a candid shot rather than a portrait. So whether she couldn't get a decent portrait. We've got Quentin Crisp, and all of these portraits. Oh, my favourite one of all of them is the one of Samuel Beckett, 1976. Look at that.
This makes you want a GFX. Oh, look, you have one.
Look at that. I know
That's
it's upside down.
Incredible, isn't it?
But
even upside down, that looks
so
good.
Jane Bowen, this book is slightly different to some of her other books in that these are many of the images, or certainly some of the images in here, are kind of the only time they've been reproduced in this way in this book, i.e. uncropped, and it's a beautiful book, all black and white. Now, Jane worked very quickly, very simply. She would turn up with her cameras in various handbags and stuff like that. It's pretty much available light.
Is the legend correct that she would turn up with shopping bag fulls?
I believe so.
Of her
I believe
cameras.
so.
But no light. Didn't travel with lighting.
No. She never used lights.
No,
it was
so it's
all natural light.
All available light.
Yeah, I mean, look at this picture of Eve Arnold, 1996. Now, it's just adorable. And it's so simple, and we live in this world where we are, we spend thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands on digital cameras, and then we process them to look like old film, which I always think is really funny. Yeah. And yet, actually, I don't know what she was shooting with, probably something very cheap and very, very simple. But beautiful pictures. Jane Bowen's Exposures. We will, of course, link to this, as we always do, on the FujiCast website. One of my favourite books, definitely. Yeah. One of my favourite books.
Yeah, we had a little time travel machine. She is on the list of people I'd love to go back to and an interview for this show. So I bet she'd have said yes as well. I think she was that kind of character that would have said, "Oh, go on then."
Look at this, you two in the pub, not us, not us. You two, the band,
the band.
Yeah, I nearly sat next to them on a plane once.
Bono?
No. But I refused to sit next to the edge.
Oh no! Oh god! Oh, small things.
Yeah, it's great. I mean, I'm just flicking through and being absorbed by the pictures as usual. But I will read out what it says off the flyleaf because I think it gives a little bit more bite to it. It says this new collection, although it's not that new any longer, presents Jane's well-known shots. It also goes behind the scenes to reveal unpublished pictures, the ones that hit the newsroom floor. At every shot, Jane took numerous wonderful studies, but the definitive image was usually chosen by the picture editor, sometimes on the basis of something as arbitrary as how much space was available on the page. In Exposures, Jane's photos finally get to speak for themselves. Presented here uncropped and in their full glory, these photographs show why Jane has been hailed as the natural successor of Cartier-Bresson and one of the UK's preeminent portrait photographers. And I agree.
Hell of a book.
Hell of a book.
Definitely one to add to your collection.
Indeed.
One more question before we have this week's disaster stories. Friend of the show, Barry Paffey. I've just paid my £16.76 income tax bill for the year 2018-19.
Same as Amazon then.
Yeah. This obviously means I'm one of those you often mention on the podcast, working less than the minimum wage. Not just because I charge too little, though. More like I've gone from an average of 60-plus weddings a year down to less than 20 in the space of 3 years, ? Despite my best efforts, things continue to decline to such a degree, I've been forced to take on a second job driving for Uber. Not complaining, and I have quite a few photographers in my area that are feeling the pinch, and many more that won't admit it. And that's actually, Barry, You've put your finger right on the pulse of the thing there, haven't you, really? Because so many people are like, yeah, I'm doing 40, 45, yeah. And when you dig a little bit closer, they're not really doing that much. And it's that kind of passive-aggressive thing when people are discussing, how the business is going. Anyway, my question to you chaps is, what job would you both do if you could no longer make a living from photography? Kind regards, Barry. I start with Uber on Monday. Actually, Kev, we could have Kia cars. Kev's Kia cars.
I'd do Uber Eats. I think
Uber Eats.
I think I'd be better at Uber Eats.
Oh my God, no! But you'd be huge. You'd be, I don't know. That's not fair. You wouldn't be, but I know if I was doing Uber Eats, I'd be for everything in. I'd just take a little bit out. They won't notice.
So what would you do? What would you do? I think I know the answer to this.
Well, but is it slightly cheating to say sound? Because that's
well, sound isn't a job, is it? You've got to put flesh on that bone.
Yeah, that's true.
What would you do?
Well, radio or something. Go back to the radio.
Back to radio presenting.
Yeah. But that now is like a ever decreasing circle of opportunity. Because I know a lot of my mates that work in the industry no longer do that. In fact, a couple of them went into photography.
Yeah.
To escape radio.
Yeah. Oh, I don't know. I'd like to do something. Seems really crass, but I'd like to do something environmental. I think
something for the animals,
like marine biology or something.
Yeah,
I quite like the sound of that.
Oh wow, yeah. Wouldn't you have to be slightly
cleverer?
Well, no, I didn't know. I didn't mean that. Wouldn't you have to be qualified in something to do with marine biology?
Well, yeah, but you'd have to be qualified in talking on the radio, wouldn't you?
No.
Yeah, I mean, okay. Well, if it was something that I'm qualified to do, then I would be an economist.
Oh wow!
Yeah, no, stick that up your radio jumper. Yeah.
Oh, there we go.
That's what I did. Actually, yeah, I would quite like to be. I don't know, but not. Can you be an independent economist? You're encumbering me. Yeah, because I wouldn't want to work for a big corporate again.
No, God, no. Because that would just steal your soul, wouldn't it?
Yeah,
really. I mean, that's the whole reason.
In fact, I'd be a bin man.
Really?
Yeah.
But you're still working for a corporate.
Yeah, but only until 12. Then you go home.
You have to get up at 3 in the morning.
That's all right.
Oh, that's all right then, isn't it? It seems a very apposite time to go into the disaster stories. I've got a couple, actually. This one is from Marissa Kasnia in Ontario, in Canada. My first ever paid gig was an engagement shoot with my Canon 5D4. Not only have I left the camera on JPEG, only accidentally, I was so nervous I also left it at 640 for the whole time instead of auto. I had taken 50 blown out photos. We did the reshoot the next day, luckily, as the weather cooperated, and I blamed it on a defective memory card. The old defective memory card trick, eh? I was certain that was the end of my career. Luckily, however, I got away with it. Thank you for the hard work making a podcast. It's epic. From Marissa. Have you ever had a situation like that? Or the exposure? When in the Canon days when you were using DSLR?
Yeah. I remember, one of the things that I used to imprint on my brain was remember when you're walking out of the church to change the ISO. Yeah. That was it.
And did you ever forget? Every time.
I did forget a few times, but I used to just remember, because of course this was back before electronic viewfinders.
During the war.
And I used to just remember, right, just turn it to the left. Just turn it to the left about a quarter, and that would generally be enough. And then, everything else I could recover. Yeah. Easy to do.
Yes.
Easy to do.
Jan Bakker. Hi, Kevin, Neil. When you started doing disaster stories, I wondered who would admit to their errors, but here I am doing just that. Just a short one, 2 in the space of a month last year. I shoot quite a lot of sport and especially football, where I'm the photographer who trusts his cameras at the back of the goal on a trigger to get the action as the goal goes in. I've always wondered about those cameras. Yeah. I've always thought, if you get somebody like Ronaldo that really can thump a ball. But, I mean, those nets, they do actually move.
Occasionally you see the cameras flying into the crowds and stuff.
Yeah. Anyway, last year then I had 2 disasters with this. I went to retrieve my cameras at the end of a game, and one had been simply lifted. We don't know. He said stolen, so I said lifted. We don't know if it was staff or somebody watching the game. CCTV from the midway point just shows somebody seemingly clearing up.
Nice.
Yes, he cleared my camera up in his bag, it seems. Number 2, particularly moody goalkeeper. Club was in brackets. It's a Dutch club. We're not mentioning them. Who took a boot to my camera after conceding a goal. Camera was okay, the lens was a mess. All ends well though, as the club paid for the lens, as they should, but luckily also a replacement camera.
Oh, nice.
So now I have 2 working cameras.
Yeah, nice.
There's an all well that ends well
one.
If you have a photo disaster, then please, we would love to hear from you. It's click@fujicast.co.uk is the address. Send yours in.
And I hope that goalkeeper hurt his toe.
Mind you, you'd be thanking him, wouldn't you?
Well, actually, yeah, true.
Thanks very much for
thanks for the new camera.
For the nice camera, yeah. By the way, I wasn't sure whether last week, if you were offended by one of the disaster stories on the live show from the House of Photography, our most humble apologies. I wasn't sure whether to edit it out or not. It was one of the strangest stories I think we've ever had on the show. I wasn't sure how much of it was true and how much of it was...
Listen, it was Glasgow Lee
at his finest,
and I can guarantee that there was a very, very heavy smattering of humour in that.
Yes.
So it was.
You seem to be holding back here.
Well, Gemma did mention it. I have to say.
Oh, did she?
Yeah.
What did Gemma say? Did Gemma just get a bit?
No, I'll tell you. I'll tell you when we're off air. But,
really? Oh my God.
Yeah, but it was just Glasgow Lee being Glasgow Lee. We love him to bits.
I know we do. Right. Thank you very much for your company on the show today. Thank you to Tom Heaton, our guest. Really enjoyed talking with Thomas. If you've liked this week's show, then thank you. And if you can, leave a review. That would be absolutely super duper, because that really does help us, especially in Apple Podcasts. See you in the Facebook group for any questions you have about today's show. Play nice, of course. The mods, Steve and Peter, are in there with their nice shiny FIFA referee tops on. And of course, we have another group, which is 4 at FujiCast 4.
FujiCast at 4.
FujiCast 4 at FujiCast.
4 at FujiCast.
Yes,
which was the thing that we invented a few weeks ago.
But you've put a new moderator in there.
Neil.
You've employed Neil Ford.
Yeah, well, Neil said, "How shall we deal with this?" And I said, "Well done, Neil. You're now an admin. You look after it."
That's delegation. Delegation's what you need. Who was that? Delegation. I know that's dedications. What you need.
That was, what's his name? Wasn't it?
Roy Castle. Oh, bless him. Roy Castle.
Yeah, liked him.
Yes. Anyway, send your questions, your thoughts, your disaster stories to click at fujicast.co.uk. Music's on Blue Wednesday, supporting music from the incredible artlist.io. Stick around for the outtakes that we're now doing at the end of the show. And if you want to see our offerings to the photo community and world, there's one address that you now need to go to for all our personal stuff.
Learn about the kit Neil and Kevin use, get links to all their websites, and find out first about any new workshops coming up by going to www.fujicast.co.uk/the boys.
And we will see you next week. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
And now the bits that didn't make the show.
No, it's fine. Yeah.
Okay. I just listened back to it and I thought, there's far too many jingles. Right, let's start this bit again. And if you want to see any of our offerings to the photo community and world, there's one address that you need to go to now. Oh, there's one there's one address that you need to go to now. Can't edit that bit, it's over music. Oh, balls. Why's
This is great. It's got to go in the outtakes.
Oh, Flamer, why is that thing not working? Player 3 and 4 aren't working. I don't know why player 3 and 4 aren't working. I paid my license! For heaven's sake.
The FujiCast is an independent loading zone production. Email the show with your questions and words of wisdom to click@fujicast.co.uk. Email any complaints and political nonsense to our wives, who will deal with your comments in their own good time and in their own good way.